You have to take that pain that you're feeling, that difficulty that you're working with, and make a decision. Because this decision is a life or death decision that you will make.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the We're Not Stumped podcast. I'm your host, Mike Bolland, and today I welcome Kelvin Crosby. Kelvin is a podcaster, a motivational speaker, an artist, and an inventor. And he's done all this while having hearing loss since birth. Also, during his life, he's progressively lost his sight, becoming legally blind at age 19. And we're going to learn all about that today and more with Kelvin. But first, Kelvin, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the We're Not Stumped podcast. I really appreciate it.
I'm so excited to be here. I have become a fan over time as I learn about your podcast. And as I tell people, it's so good to see you, even though I can't see you. It's another beautiful day in the neighborhood. And I always say that because it truly is a beautiful day, even though you can't see.
Oh,
If you can accept
wow.
that challenge, you can say it's a beautiful day.
Well, thank you for that. It is a beautiful day, and it's a beautiful day because I get to talk to you. We always start the podcast with a segment I call In Your Own Words, so I'd love the audience to learn more about you.
Yeah. Well, let's start off when I came out of my mom's womb. They had no idea that I would have the challenges I would have. And it was about 1.5 years old. They learned that I wasn't developing my speech. And they were saying, what is going on with my baby? I was
Hmm.
their firstborn. They never had a child before that. And so they took me to my hearing appointment and they said, your son is hard of hearing. And we do not know why. We know it's very severe, but we don't know what caused the hearing loss. And it's not because you were doing drugs or anything like that. We just don't know why. So by the 1.5 years old, 2 years old, my parents put my first pair of hearing aids on, and decided to choose to have me being a hearing child. And I know this is the controversial topic for the deaf and hard of hearing community: is do you make your child a hearing child or a ASL sign language child? And my parents chose to make me a hearing child. As my life would progress, I would literally grow up as a hearing child wearing hearing aids, just with a kind of hard of hearing voice that sounded different. And it did cause some problems when I grew up. I got into a lot of fights because the bullies were not being very nice. But because I was really good in sports, it created an opportunity for me to be able to be better in sports and be able to get on really good teams and so forth. And I realized I can do this. And it was one soccer game when I was 13 years old. I was playing a game at night, and next thing you know, the lights went out on the field. And it wasn't because of my vision. It was because the circuit breaker on the field went out. Like it literally just exploded. And I was standing there. It was a half moon, and my dad was just calling my name, and I realized I can't see anything. And I started screaming, Dad, 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 Dad. I can't see, I can't see, I can't see. And my dad came and got me, pulled me off that field, takes me home. 3 months later, we would find me in the doctor's office.
Wow.
And we would find out that I have a disease called Usher Syndrome Type 2, which caused my hearing loss from birth. And now we know that answer. Finally. But at the cost of learning that I also would lose my vision at some point in my life. By the age of 13, I had lost my night vision, and I didn't accept it. So I just kept doing everything else like everybody else would do. Got a driver's license, did all those things, continued to play in sports, played football, soccer, swam, wrestled. What else did I do? I did a couple others, basketball, and all those things. I was good. But one thing kept coming up into my life is that my peripheral vision So you see 180 degrees. Started getting smaller and smaller
Hmm.
and smaller.
Wow.
And the next thing you know, by the age of 19 years old, I'm walking into the doctor. And the doctor is saying, Kelvin, your vision is less than 20 degrees of vision,
Wow.
meaning that you are officially legally blind. And that also means you're no longer legally allowed to drive.
Wow.
I'm 19 years old, asking the question, what do you mean? You're going to take away my independence? You're going to take that away from me? And I find myself going back to school after that doctor's appointment. At this point, I was going to a Bible school in Sequoia National Park. And I started realizing, developing a hatred for my deaf blindness. Because the definition of deaf blindness is when you have a hearing loss and a vision loss. And basically, to the government, if you have those two, you're considered deaf blind. So you got Helen Keller, who's completely deaf, completely blind, and you got me, who's legally blind and hard of hearing. And anything in between that is the definition of deaf blindness. And I didn't want to accept that. I didn't want that in my life. And so would start taking that into my own hands, saying, no, I don't accept that. And I'll never forget the moment when I chose to say, no, I don't want this, which sent me down a path saying, I don't want to live anymore either. So while I was at school, it would be right about midday. I would leave the campus and I would go into the mountains and I would hike. I would get around that lake where nobody would know where I was at. And I would climb up into the areas where there were the different caves and everything in hopes that an animal would come out
Hmm.
so I could end my life.
Wow.
I would do this 12 times. On the 12th time, a still soft voice said, Kelvin, 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 I have a plan for you. I have a purpose for your deaf blindness. And I want you to accept it. And I want you to have joy in it. From that moment on, I would walk down from that mountain unscathed, had some hairy moments, but came back and started learning how to accept deaf blindness. And that was the beginning of the story of how I would become deaf blind and embrace this life called deaf blindness.
And you're doing so much now. As you go out and talk to people, and certainly on your podcast, how do you express that story and try to impact others that are probably going through exactly what you were going through at that time?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. And I think one of the things that I do try to have people focus on, and it's a cliche, but it's truly it's great. Remember, my name is Kelvin, Kelvin. Where do you see that in the world? It's the temperature of light,
Hmm.
and there's no negative in it. And you use it in chemistry. It's an absolute zero is negative. There is no negative in that temperature. And I love to tell people, since my name is Kelvin, you can't find negative. You're always going to find the positive. And so there's no negative here. But I tell people, as I share this story. You have to take that pain that you're feeling, that difficulty that you're working with, and make a decision. Because this decision is a life or death decision that you will make. Whether you got PTSD, you got a limb you're struggling with, you got cancer, you got mental illness, you got other things, you got whatever this is. You got one decision you got to really make and put all your energy into that decision. Am I going to deal with this emotion of pain, suffering, difficulty, frustration with joy? Or am I going to allow that emotion of frustration, annoyance, pain, suffering, difficulties to take me into depths of sorrow? You got to make that decision.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to tell you, if you choose joy, the path will be unbelievable. You'll do things you never thought you'd do. But if you choose sorrow, you're going to find yourself like myself in the mountains, wanting to finish it. If you choose that, you're taking it away from everybody else around you. You might not think anybody cares about you. Guarantee you, you're listening to somebody right now that cares about you. I care about you. I might not know you, but if you send me an email, I will care about you. If you send me a message, I will care about you. I want you to fight. I want you to have that opportunity to see what it would be like if you have joy in that struggle that you're facing. And the opportunities that will open right before your hands.
Wow. You know, I want to remind everyone how to get a hold of you because you just said, hey, if they reach out. I'm talking with Kelvin Crosby, who can be found at kelvincrosby.com. And just a reminder, everything we're going to talk about today is linked off of that site. I'm not going to go into it now. It'll give it away. But one of those things, including your invention, let's face it, it's a life-saving tool.
Exactly.
You want to talk about that one now? Because it just blew me away when I was watching everything you've done and the videos you've created.
Yeah, I mean, what it came down to is when I was 20, I was going to Helen Keller National Center for a deaf-blind school. I was embracing deaf-blindness, and I wanted my independence. So I sought it out. So I started going into Manhattan in New York, and I started traveling all on my own with my white cane, or aka a blind cane, and I just started going. And I remember with a Thursday night, and I was coming home from church and going to Penn Station. It was cold, and this San Diego boy does not understand what wind chill means. I had a rude awakening. And what ended up happening was I found myself not too far from Penn Station. I stepped off the curb, sweep my cane to the left. I stepped with my left foot off the curb and sweep my cane to the right. As I swept that cane to the right, I was in the street. I'm usually blind at this point. I'm not an expert in cane skills, but I did everything correct. But the taxi driver never saw me. My cane hit the front of the taxi, went flying down the road, and my right hand ended up hitting the mirror. I'm freezing. I'm cold. And I'm now just been hit by a car.
Wow.
I was very, very fortunate. I wasn't any farther forward, or I probably wouldn't be talking to you today. This was that night. I had to deal with this trauma, and I because of my ambition for life, I allowed it to take me into that darkness for a little bit. I grieved that sorrow, but I said I gotta keep going. So 3 weeks later, I would come back out, and I would be going on my way to church, and I'd be a little bit farther up. I can't. I can't even remember these street names. I know it's like I'm 50 something, and I did everything correct. But this time, because I had that experience 3 weeks earlier, I was able to hear that is a little too close for my comfort. The taxi driver got my cane, but I was able to get out of the way and not get hit with my body. I realized, am I doing something wrong? Or just people not seeing me? As I became a cane user and became more efficient, I found that no, I'm doing everything correct. As professionals in the field was telling me, Kelvin, you're one of the best cane users I've ever seen. So that means people are not seeing me. So how do I get people to see me? Well, do I make a light? Do I make a beep? Do I make it scream at you? Do I make a clown horn like honk honk? I'm right here. That's where my creativity started really running in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't necessarily trying to create a cool looking item. I wasn't trying to create a toy. And I wasn't trying to create something that people would see as, oh, this is a cool factor. What I was creating was a defensive walking tool. And so what I ended up doing is I ended up inventing a product called a SeeMeCane, which is a lighted white cane. It looks like use it as that you avoid the warranty. Just an FYI.
Say that again. I'm sorry. If you
If you
do what?
use it as a lifesaver, you void the warranty.
I thought you said that. I wanted to make sure.
Yep.
No light
Yeah.
sabers.
Yep. And in our first launch in 2023, we offered two different types of canes colors, all white and then all white with the red bottom. And because there are white lightsabers out there, people started seeing it as a lightsaber. And I was like, this is not a lightsaber. This is a defensive walking tool that looks cool and is very bright. And so what we've done in SeeMeCane 1R is the only cane color you get is just all white with red bottom. Because this isn't about being cool. This isn't about being a product that gives me a cool factor and be let the force be with you. It's not that. This cane, for the first time ever for the visually impaired community, is a tool that gives visually impaired people the opportunity to practice defensive walking. Because now you're in control of the light. That means you can make the light do things so that you can hear the environment
Wow.
react to the light.
Wow.
It's amazing the stories I hear from people that have SeeMeCanes. They're standing on the end of the curb, getting ready to cross that street. They turn their light on, and it's like the whole world just freezes because they know here that they've been seen.
Wow.
They can cross that street with confidence.
Yeah.
they can go across through life with confidence. We don't have to worry about, that person seeing me. No, the light did the work. It finally gives us the opportunity to have that freedom.
And safety, right? I didn't realize, I read this off of, by the way, it's SeeMeCane.com. I want to make sure people get that URL. It'll be linked in the description, of course. But something I read on the website was that 1 in 3 blind people will be hit by a car in their lifetime, and you have been hit 3 times. So
Yep.
you've taken the slack for others.
Oh,
So
yes.
maybe a little bit more. So, but it's just such a great product. And, again, not knowing those stats myself, it just amazes me that, you do have a calling. And this product is something that's going to help many and has helped many people. And you were talking about some of the stories you've gotten already. What are some of the stories you've heard from people that have used the cane?
Yeah. I mean, I'll never forget this one lady coming up to me. She said, in tears, you changed my life.
Wow.
This cane gives me so much confidence. Just to know that I can use the light for people to see me. You don't realize, like, I had no idea. Like, and she just kept going on all the different things she had going for her now. My buddy Evan, he goes, I met you because of the SeeMeCane. I wanted you on my podcast. But now that I have one, it is truly my defensive walking tool. I met a lady a couple weeks ago that her SeeMeCane broke. Her and I we're still having to figure out what happened there. But she was like, everybody's wondering, where is your cane? We felt confident that you were okay. Another one is a lady who lives in a rural area, and she has to walk on the side of the road. And she walks against traffic so that way people can see her. And as she is walking, she can hear the cars slowing down. So she could just keep walking. And then she can hear the cars moving to the right a little bit of her, or the left, or whatever side of the road she's on. These are the stories that are coming out. People are saying, because I had this in the airport, I was able to get to point A to point B efficiently. Because I had it in the elevator and I have low vision, I was able to read the signs. What comes to find out, the SeeMeCane is becoming not just a defensive walking tool, it is also a really powerful light to help people with low vision be able to read signs, find things. There are a lot of low vision people out there that don't use their canes right, and they keep trying to see at night. But this cane lights up an area really, really well and allows you to see enough what's in front of you. I mean, people that have low vision, they're eating this cane up because it now lights up the curb, it lights up the area around them, and they're cool. They're like, I'm cool, and I got a cane that lights up and gives me that confidence. And I mean, those are just some of the stories. I mean, if you go to SeeMeCane podcast, you'll be able to hear more testimonies of people that it changed their life.
Yeah. And you have a goal, too, of funding 1,000 canes by yourself. And you have a very creative, let's call it creative because you're an artist, a creative way of doing that. And that's DeafBlindPotter. And that's something that the stuff that's on there is just amazing. So we're talking to Kelvin Crosby. It can be found at kelvincrosby.com. And when I said all of his other links can be found there, that includes DeafBlindPotter and SeeMeCane.com. So I'd love to hear more about your creative outlet with DeafBlindPotter. And what are you
Yeah.
doing with that?
So DeafBlindPotter came out of a need to heal from losing all the clarity in my vision when I was 32.
Hmm.
And that was the year of COVID, March 2020. So if you want to do your math, you can figure that out, how old I am. But as I worked through that process and I started really realizing, how do I navigate my healing process? Well, I've been doing pottery since I was 16. I got a minor in ceramics, and so I knew it. And at the time of March 2020 is when the first working version of the SeeMeCane was working.
Wow.
It wasn't ready for prime time. It wouldn't be ready for another 3 years. But we had a product that people wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So I went ahead and like, all right, we're going for it. And as I started really exploring those options and I started pitching to investors saying, hey, would you invest? And I had two investors. They were kind of like a private VC type
Hmm.
investors. And but when COVID hit, they pretty much lost the whole fund. And like, tell me we can't do it.
Hmm.
I was devastated because this was the only fund I was gonna have. And little did I know, I would lose all the clarity in my vision and no longer able to do engineering. I mean, I can still engineer if I use blind haptics strategies, but I wasn't able to do with the little vision I had left, like CADing and all that stuff. And it was not easy.
Mm-hmm.
And as I went through that process, a friend of mine said, hey, we know you have a powder wheel. You're not using it. Can we borrow it? Because everybody's locked down. And I said, under one condition, I get to come over to your house and make pottery so I can heal through my deaf blindness. Because what happened literally, it would be almost 10 years earlier, maybe a little more than that. When I was at Huntington National Center, they said, Kelvin, we knew you did pottery in high school. We want you to get on the pottery wheel and practice flowing without your vision. I'm like, you're crazy. You are crazy. And but I did it. There was a lot of anger involved,
Mm-hmm.
but I did it. As I progressed, I found myself being in a situation in 2020 at my friend's house. They made a video and put it on TikTok and said, the deaf blind Potter is back. It's just me and Lily walking out of their garage into the ceramic shack, they called it, and sitting down and making a pottery piece. It was great. We would go to bed the next day, that night. The next day, the video was already over 100,000 views,
Wow.
and I had already gotten 10,000 subscribers.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, and I'm getting orders. I have no website, and people are like, we want a custom, we want a custom, we want. I'm like, what in the world? I said, So then we would put another video out. Within hours, it hit 1.4 million views,
Wow.
and I became the deaf blind potter. And I started a business. And that business, within the first 2 years, found my engineer to help me finish the SeeMeCane and also paid for her to finish the SeeMeCane. for basically until 2020, the end of 2023. Yeah, it was the summer of 2023 is when I got my first investment. Prior to that, it was fully funded by the DeafBlindPotter to make the SeeMeCane.
Talk about going full circle. I mean, that's
Mm-hmm.
amazing. Your pottery is funding your invention, and then you're also a podcaster. I want to make sure. I think you said the name already, but I want to make sure that we say it again. So if people want to listen to your podcast, they can find it. What
Yeah,
is
so
it?
I have three podcasts.
Okay.
My podcast that comes off of DeafBlindPotter is called Perseverance Podcast. And so you can go to Perseverance Podcast anywhere you find your podcast. And it comes out once a month. And I interview people that have gone through struggles in life and have persevered and built a character that has hope.
Wow.
And at the end of the day, what we've been talking about, that joy in your sorrows, the joy in your pain, perseveres. When you persevere, you build a character that has hope. And that's what that podcast is all about. And you get to hear the struggles in my daily life at the end of the show. I in my announcements, I'm very upfront that I'm still a human being struggling, and my goal is to share my pains with you, so that way, if you hear my pains, you can have joy in yours. And so that's the Perseverance podcast. The other podcast is SeeMeCane podcast, which is a brand new podcast that launched last month, and that one comes out every second and fourth Mondays. And that podcast is all about the progress that we're making in the SeeMeCane 1R. And so you get to see me build and develop and manufacture and all the people behind it. And you get to hear all the testimonies of people that have SeeMeCane 2023s. And you get to watch us test the SeeMeCanes.
Oh, that's
So,
cool. That's cool.
yeah. So that's SeeMeCane podcast. And then my last one is investing in accessibility. And your audience would probably love to hear about this one.
Yeah.
Investing in Accessibilities is a podcast that came out of a conversation I had with a VC fund, a venture capitalist fund. And it's called Samaritan Partners. And the mission of Samaritan Partners is to create opportunity to create universal access investment opportunities for people with disabilities. It's a mouthful,
Hmm.
but the whole idea is products, services, and programs that needs investments and that it can show universal access for all people, including people with disabilities. That is a product they want to invest in,
Wow.
or a service,
Hmm.
or a program. And so, what we're going to do at the podcast, me and Chris Marr, we interview people that are experts in the field, and we show how the financial returns are coming full circle for investing in accessibility access for all. And it is awesome. It is one of my favorite podcasts I've ever done. I mean, granted, I like my other ones too, but this one really is showing you that if you put your money in universal access for all people, including people with disabilities, you're going to return your investment 10 times, 15 times X
Wow.
on your investment.
And what is the name of that podcast again? I want to make sure that's
So
out there.
investing in accessibility.
Investing in accessibility. I can't wait. I'm going to get on there as soon as I get off the. As soon as I'm done with your interview off of this crazy little podcast here. But yeah. Hey, I want to ask another question, and this is
Yeah.
kind of unrelated to what we're talking about, but there's a sport that I was introduced to probably within the last year that I find one of the most exciting sports that I've ever seen. And since you've done sports before, have you ever done or heard of goalball?
I've heard of Goalball.
Yeah.
I played it once. Um, I haven't quite gotten the full grasp of it, but I know a lot of people involved in it.
Yeah,
Um,
like I said, I watched, and I'm going to do a little plug for Arizona Disabled Sports here in Arizona. Went to Ability 360 and saw the Arizona Heat, and yeah, it was great. There was teams from all over the country that came out, and for those that don't know, it's a sport for the blind, and it is one of the most exciting sports. Let's just call it what it is. It doesn't matter if it's one-handed people, blind people. This is one of the most exciting sports that I've ever seen. So I just didn't know if you'd heard of it or you participated in it.
I mean, for people to understand it, it is like dodgeball with soccer mixed together.
Yeah.
And but you can't move. So once you're in, so the way the ball has a rattle in it. So when you throw it, well, you have to roll it. You can't throw. There's no throwing.
Yeah, that's true.
You roll it.
Maybe bowling's in there a little bit too then.
Yeah. And then you have different players, and then you basically are going to stand in one spot, and you can't leave your feet. So as the ball rolls, then you can dive, but you still have to stay on your feet in that diving. Like, you can't, like, jump. You have to, everything, it's crazy. Yeah. It is an awesome sport. And it is an Olympic sport, by the way. Yeah. Paralympic sport. But
it is so cool. Yeah. I just want to remind everyone I'm talking to Kelvin Crosby. He can be found at kelvincrosby.com. And everything we've talked about, whether it be the SeeMeCane, the DeafBlindPotter, his podcast, they're all linked from that website. And you know what I want to say here, too? Because we're going to go back to the beginning and you talk about that 12th time you went into the mountains and heard a voice. Yeah, you definitely have purpose and you're fulfilling your purpose. And I thank you for sharing your story with everyone on the We're Not Stumped podcast. I urge everyone to go to kelvincrosby.com to learn more about you. But thank you so much for being on the We're Not Stumped podcast. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
You're just doing great things. And everyone out there, go to SeeMeCane.com, go to the DeafBlindPotter so we can continue to support other people that need these canes. Just make it all go full circle. But thank you so much for being on the podcast.
I mean, your podcast truly is helping other people. And as you bring on guests, giving them a purpose. Like, I mean, there were several, like Anna. I mean, her story, it resonated with me. I still have all my limbs, but the pain and the struggle and the fight to just keep going in her story was just moving and inspiring. And like, if she can do it, I can do it. And this is where I do want to encourage you all. Do not compare yourself to other people with disabilities. This is something that we can get really dangerous. Like, I have a buddy who's a quadriplegic, paints with his mouth. It inspires me like no other. But he'll turn around and say, Kelvin, I don't know how you do all of this. You inspire me. And I told him, and he started comparing himself to me. And I said, that is a dangerous game. Yeah. We have different disabilities. We have different struggles. The key thing is don't compare yourself to other people. Do what brings you joy. And that's how you're going to live beyond your challenges. That's how you're going to persevere. So it's okay to be inspired and have it motivate you. But if you try to be somebody else that you are not, that's a dangerous place to be.
Thank you for saying that. That is very powerful and something I need to be reminded of, like everyone else as well. Again, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Thank you for listening to this episode of the We're Not Stumped podcast. I have an ask for everyone that got to this point of the podcast. Please like, share, and subscribe. The reason is simple. These stories need to be shared. It would help it to get out there to the people that really need to hear these stories.